In 1993, when I wrote Dead Man Walking, it was the height of support for the death penalty in the United States. In 96, 78% of the American public supported the death penalty. And in the deep South states that practiced slavery, like Texas, like Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, it was 85% support. And here this Catholic nun writes a book on the death penalty, and it's published in 93 and came out in paperback in 94. What are the chances of this book? And then it made its way. And this is where we know we're participating in a larger providence. We play our little part, but it's all part of a deeper, wider community of people who work for human rights and for restorative justice, that killing is not the way. And the book had its way of going out there. By 94, when it was made into a paperback, it went into the lap of Susan Sarandon, who was filming one of the John Grisham movies in Memphis, The Client. She had time in her trailer. Her friend Arlene hands her the book. See, a book has tremendous power. I had to learn the power of a book, because see, I'm a talker, and we tell stories, and I think if you talking, you doing something, right? You could see your audience, we could go on this ride together, see. But a book, I always pictured a book, well, it's passive. You know, like I always pictured in a bookstore, you look at all the books. Like if that book could have a little finger that could come out of the spine, and a little finger in the book could go, hey, read me, look, I got this story here. But the little book has to just sit there. I always thought a book is passive. What could a book do? And then this book begins to go out there, and I begin to see the power of the story. I had a great editor, Jason Epstein. I credit him with the book not only seeing the light of day, but playing a role in this country of sparking part of the national dialogue that happened. Because when he helped me, when I did the first draft of Dead Man Walking, I want to take people with me. Never did this before. Go to death row, visit the man on death row, look through that mesh screen. Ooh, he's a human being. Knew about human rights, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. He has human rights. He shouldn't be tortured. He shouldn't be killed. Growing, coming to understand, legal system, everything. He murdered with his brother 2 innocent teenage kids. The boy, David LeBlanc, was just 17 years old. The young woman, Loretta Bourque, was just 18 years old. The picture their parents sent for the newspaper was their prom photo. A happy night. And then there's the terrible headline, teenagers found murdered. And when I entered then into this part of the story, oh my God, this man whose dignity I believe in, whose human rights I believe in, he brutally killed these 2 innocent kids, and their family never saw them alive again. They went to a football game and they never saw them alive again. And I'm with him, that kind of guilt, like, what am I doing with him? And then a big mistake, not reaching out to the victims' families, because I made an assumption. I'm the spiritual advisor of the man who killed these kids. They are never going to want to see me. Basically, though, when I turned in the first draft to Jason Epstein, he said, Helen, you really downplayed not reaching out to those victims' families. He said, that was a big mistake. He said, you're really downplaying it. You really need to... It was cowardice, wasn't it? And while I was saying they don't want to see me, I was really scared that they'd be angry, that they'd reject me, they'd throw me out of the house. And he said, look, write your story, but don't just take people with you on the peaks of the waves when you do it all right. Take them in the troughs where you make mistakes. Then they're going to trust you as a storyteller, because we all want to kind of couch things. So, oh, here's what I did well. So you take them there. And so in the second draft, he helped me tremendously. He also helped me. He said, you buried all of your information about the death penalty, how race plays a part, how poverty, it's all in footnotes. Only a scholar's going to read footnotes. The secret of good storytelling is people are going to read for story, but you weave in all the important parts of information you want them to know about how the death penalty works. The scholars later will dig deeper, but before a person closes the cover of that book, they're going to know all the important things about how the death penalty works that you want them to see. And that's the art of good writing. So he helped tremendously. So Susan, when she gets the book, she sees that I am really going over to both sides of it. The book has been reissued, the 20th anniversary. It's very unusual for a publisher to do. But they see it as important in the discourse in the country. Random House, really big publisher, part of Bertelsmann's now. I mean, it's huge. But Susan could see, here's a nun getting in over her head. She doesn't know what she's doing. That's helpful for a story, because people are going to follow the one. Oh, well, I got a letter from a man after he went to see the movie A Dead Man Walking, and he said, "Sister, I'm going to tell you, I said to myself, that nun no more knows what she's getting herself into with that convict. He's going to con her." And that's part of the story. See, here comes somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And Susan Sarandon loves to talk about it, and so does Tim Robbins. Here's a nun getting in over her head. And when you see Susan in the film Dead Man Walking, you see her going to the prison, his eyes real big, she's scared. Getting into something, boy, this is new territory. I don't know what I'm doing. Anybody can follow that kind of journey. Just compare it to, here she is speaking before Congress. Here she is saying, this is why the death penalty is wrong. For us then, like, the picture's closed. It's kind of like when you take a saint and you make them a saint, you put them on a pedestal. There's a disconnect if people are too perfect, if they're too accomplished. And this came out in a lot of ways as we write in the script of the film. There was a scene when I was with my family, and Mama says to me, "Helen, honey, what has drawn you? This is the end of the line, people here. They're on death row. Wouldn't your time be better spent with the children in St. Thomas, like saving them from going to prison and death row?" And I was an active part of writing the script with them. We worked on it together. And I had written in a pretty nice little Jesus speech, because I'd said, "Well, Mama, Jesus was always with the marginated people, the outcasts, the people nobody cared about. I'm just trying to do what Jesus did." So Susan Sarandon's looking at that. She goes, "Well," she crosses out my whole Jesus speech and says, "It kind of sounds like the company line. Here goes the nun now. She's going to give us the Jesus speech. Of course, that's what nuns do. Predictable." She said, "How about this?" And she wrote one little sentence in it. "Mama, I feel more caught than drawn. He asked me to come." Anybody watching this journey can be part of that. Yeah, you get caught. So you're going. You don't know where it's going to go. And then I called Susan the hero of the film because she realized we needed a new kind of narrative film about the death penalty, what you'd call the master narrative, kind of predictable, formulaic film that had been in the United States up to the time of Dead Man Walking was. The whole film was about, is he innocent, guilty? Is she innocent, guilty? Okay, yeah, we find out they're guilty. Ends with the execution. Justice is done. End of film. End of reflection. And she said, we have to bring and keep bringing the audience over to both sides of this suffering. Because what we're told, oh, this is the way we're going to help a victim's family. We're going to get justice for them. If somebody killed your daughter, how would you feel about their getting life in prison? They're alive and she's dead forever. Only one justice, one way of justice, and that is, if they kill, they deserve to die too. And we're going to do this for the victim's family. And she said, we have to explode that. We have to show. And the film, Tim Robbins felt very happy when victims' families were getting in touch with him after the film Dead Man Walking came out, because they saw how sensitively he dealt with victims' families. And by sensitive means no caricatures. What do you expect of a victim's family? A father's daughter has been killed. You see him screaming into the TV lens, "I want to kill him with my own hands. I wish I could pull the switch. I want to see him experience pain." A caricature of a human being who's in great trauma, outrage, grief, all in chaos inside himself. And so they show in the film Dead Man Walking, you have the Percys who come to the whole thing about the death penalty. Yes, this is what we think justice will be. They go through the film, they witness the execution, they walk off the screen, and as far as we know about the Percys, they're fine with that. They don't have any questions. But then the other victim's family, Earl Delacroix, whose son had been killed, you see that he wants the execution too. This is what everybody's telling him. This is what justice is going to be. And then we see him after the execution coming to me again there at the graveyard. They're just burying Matthew Poncelet. And he goes, "I don't know why I'm here." Clearly in his face, you know that witnessing the execution was not enough. And then Susan gave us these lines in the film too. "Sister," he says, "I don't have your faith." And she says, "It's not faith, it's work. We have to, play a part in this. Maybe we can find a way together." And the film actually ends with prayer. It actually ends with my praying with Earl Delacroix, who in the book of Dead Man Walking was really Lloyd LeBlanc, whose son had been killed, and I would go to this chapel to pray with him. And he's the real hero of the book, because he's a man who was thrown into the crucible of suffering, losing his only son, and found a way out of it through forgiveness, which he said people see as weakness in this society. Everybody thinks forgiveness is weak, like you're condoning it. "Oh, you kill my son, I forgive you," means it's okay. It's not okay. Could never condone it. But his journey, and he's the most exciting one, I think, in the whole Revelation. Everybody goes through a change in a film, in a good film. And as Susan Sarandon said to Sean Penn, the one who goes through the most change is the hero of the story. And of course that's Sean Penn dealing with what he did and finally owning it and taking responsibility. But the victim's family goes through change too, because as Lloyd LeBlanc, the real guy in the story, told me, "Sister, everybody was saying to me, 'Lloyd, you lost your only son. You gotta be for the death penalty or look like you didn't love David. You gotta be for it. Or what's wrong with you?' And he said, 'That's all I was hearing. Sister, you weren't there,' and I wasn't. That was my big sin. And the way he came through it was, he said, 'I went there. I said, they're right. I see how my wife's suffering, my daughter, all of us.' And he said, 'I want to pull the switch.' I went to that place," he said. "I want to see their pain. They caused us pain. I want to see their pain. I want to see them die for what they did." And then he reached a point and he said, and he did his hand like this. And he said, "They killed my son, but I'm not going to let them kill me. Because I've always been a kind person. I love to help people. It's just who I am. And I was losing it. I was becoming this person filled with this hatred and this bitterness. They killed my son, but I'm not letting them kill me. And I'm going to do what Jesus said." And he set his face to go down the road. The last words in Dead Man Walking are about this man. And the last sentence of the book is, "Forgiveness was never going to be easy. Each day it must be prayed for, struggled for, and won."